One of the really nice features about the TR version is the number of rails that you get. Many P90 fans will know that some models come with the included red dot sight, but a lot of people have complained that those that come with it are usually not up to the spec that they're looking for. So in this case, you get a very solid feeling rail. Of course, because it is metal, it feels even more substantial, and it gives you plenty of space to mount your accessories, be it an optic on the top, if you want a laser or flashlight, however you want to set it up, you've got the real estate to do it. Plus, you can hold the entire gun by the rail if you so choose, and that's a nice little means of conveyance. There's also a space right in here, presumably for a sling attachment. This would be the front portion of the sling attachment. So there you go. You have a very hefty place to mount whatever type of hoisting accessory you want. Here too, you can see that the rail actually is part of the forward portion of the receiver actually houses part of the magazine, and it kind of just sandwiches it in there, as you can kind of see right here. There isn't anything special other than just a small cutout, and that sort of receives the magazine. You can see right here, just kind of nestles into place there, and so that it serves several purposes simultaneously. One thing to notice too is that we do have a small logo right there, which of course is fun. And right below that logo, you do have the right side of the ambidextrous charging handle, which of course in this case is also built into that metal receiver and is fun to play with. It doesn't serve any real purpose on this gun. It doesn't open the ejection port, which in the real steel is actually located at the bottom of the gun, but in this case it serves no real purpose. And that really takes care of the forward portion of the gun. The trigger assembly is pretty unique. It is similar in its function to the Steyr AUG, except that it actually does have a selector switch. However, in full auto mode, you can actually get it to fire single shot if you pull the trigger back only a small portion of the way. In safe mode, you cannot pull the trigger at all. In obviously number 1, as it's labeled, that would be your single shot, and you can see that 1 is lining up with it's a seam really, but it marks the middle portion of the trigger guard, and of course A would be full auto. The trigger feel does take a little getting used to, but we'll cover that more in the firing report. And of course it is more or less ambidextrous, so for those of you who prefer left hand over the right hand, you would be able to operate this with relative ease. Should the desire strike you. You can see you can manipulate with both hands there, and then hold it left hand as well, which is nice. Now, one of the really cool aspects on the P90 is its quick takedown feature. This is accomplished by removing the magazine and then locating the small button, which is just forward of the feed port. This is the button in question right here. You're going to push it down, and then you're going to apply some steady, gradual pressure, and you'll see that as you're doing that, the entire assembly is sliding forward. It doesn't take much effort after you've gotten it going a little bit to just slide the entire thing off, and once you've done that, you can see that you basically have access to the entire forward portion of the gun, including the hop-up, the barrel, etc. So really cool feature. I like it when airsoft guns incorporate these types of things. It's something that appears to be in the real steel, and in addition to obviously making this upgrade install very easy, it also is nice from a maintenance perspective if you do have a jam or you need to get to the hop-up unit there. And while we have it out, I just want to show you that hop-up unit. It isn't complicated. It's a simple dial which operates the small lever here, and that of course would apply more or less pressure to the BBs via the bucking. So very cool, very practical, and putting it back on is a pretty straightforward affair. You're going to want to line things up properly Noting too that on the front of the gun there is a small hole here. This also locks into a small tube at the front of the gun to keep it stable. So just bear all that in mind, make sure everything is aligned properly, and then slowly slide the unit back into its position. You should see the rear portion click in. That button should be flush with this area here. If it isn't, you know you have a problem. Make sure everything is aligned. Here it's hard to get it out of alignment, but you know, you just want to make sure nonetheless. And then when you're done, you should end up with a very secure top receiver. Very cool feature. We like it a lot. The P90's buttstock is integral to the rest of the gun. The buttstock holds the relatively small battery compartment, and it's accessed by removing the rear butt plate. To remove the rear butt plate, locate the button on the bottom portion of the gun and push it in. As you're pushing in, you're going to want to apply downward force, that is to say downward pushing the plate towards the bottom of the gun and removing the plate. Once the plate is removed, you'll be able to see the battery compartment. As you can tell, it's pretty cramped. Pulling out the wiring exposes the battery, and in this case it comes with a stock 1100 milliamp battery. Now the compartment is small, but there are ways to play with it just a little bit. You can see somewhat that there's sort of a portion right in here that you could use if you wanted to create a custom-made battery, and there are P90 batteries out there just for this purpose that adds a little bit more capacity or voltage to the gun if you so choose. Putting the battery back in is pretty straightforward. Push it into the compartment, and you're going to want to push the fuse adapter down into the small depression located towards the bottom of the gun, and then cram the rest of the wiring in there. You're going to be putting the butt plate back on in a similar fashion as you removed it, and I'm going to flip the gun over to show you how that's done. In this case, you're going to want to make sure that the wider portion of the butt plate is facing towards the top of the gun. Now the gun is upside down right now, so in this case it appears to you to be going towards the bottom, but again the wider portion will face the top of the gun. Once you've got the butt plate in place, you want to make sure that all your wiring is clear, and that's the problem we're having right now, is that the wiring was just hanging it up a little bit. Put the butt plate back in its position and then push. Make sure too that the button is more or less flush with the rest of the housing. If it's not, it might pop the plate off easily. Now, one thing to notice is that once it's in place, you should note that everything is flush and secure, and nothing should be coming out of place unintentionally. Now, what you might have noticed when we were showing you the rear butt plate was the small slot on the bottom portion of the butt stock. By all accounts, this is the sling mount, and you can see there that it goes through the entire bottom portion of the gun. Now, this is plastic here, but it feels pretty sturdy, and considering that the gun itself is not very heavy, we expect that it'll support the weight of the gun without any problem. Now, one of the nice things about the P90 is the fact that it is ambidextrous. The rear handhold can be held by someone who's right-handed or left-handed, and this makes the gun a very desirable piece to have, especially if you are left-handed, as there are relatively few left-handed guns out there. One thing to note is that within the rear handhold, rather directly above the rear handhold, is a small hatch. This hatch has a little slider, and within that compartment is the hop-up. You can barely see it there. There's a small arrow which tells the user which way to adjust the wheel to change the hop-up setting. It's a little bit awkward to get to, but once you've dialed in your hop-up, you really shouldn't have to adjust it too much. So again, there isn't a lot of space on this gun to play with, and that's probably why it's located where it is. But just be aware of that. It took us a little while to find where it was located. Now what we put together for you in this review is a hybrid of what you could call a mid-priced AEG, and we added on a nice upgrade part. The overall fit and finish of the plastics used on this Classic Army P90 are what I would call average. There are some seams that were actually fairly uncomfortable, and those seams really reduce the overall rating as far as the fit and finish goes. Notice them right here, they go along the middle. On the inside of the gun, they actually do kind of chafe the hands, you know, unless you were wearing gloves or something like that. Now there is a pretty quick fix. We took an X-Acto blade and tried to smooth down these ridges. We had some pretty good success. It only took less than a couple of minutes really. You could use sandpaper, of course, or something else. And once you've done that, it takes care of the comfort factor right away. Still, though, you do see you know, a fairly unattractive seam line running down the entire middle portion of the gun there. The metal receiver is great, though. It really adds to the feel of the gun. First, it adds a little bit of weight, and it's already a light gun, so having that extra weight gives it some nice heft. And you get, of course, you know, the very secure feeling of knowing you do have that metal. So overall, I would give this an average rating on the fit and finish. But then again, it doesn't really matter that much because I've seen some higher priced AEGs that have quality that's not much better than this. So really, if you're a fan of the P90, the odds are pretty good you won't even notice. The real deal is made out of synthetic material in part anyway. So you would be pretty close to the real steel when you hold this gun, which is pretty nice. So overall, like I said, fit and finish would be just about average.